the name of Christ who calls us. Amen. Amazing readings today. Stories of death and despair and hope. We start out with this fabulous one from Ezekiel. Our bones are dry, our hope is gone, they say. It's a great image, this valley filled with dry bones. Paul talks about this sense of despair that can come upon us when he talks about the mind set on the flesh. Paul means a couple of different things when he talks about the flesh. Sometimes he means that part of human nature which is determined to live unto itself in disregard of neighbor. Sometimes he's just really talking about the body and the state of the physical world. But in either case, he says, when you set your mind on that and that alone, you're going to get stuck. That is spiritual death. To only see as far as your nose, to only see what is immediately visible to the eye, is a kind of living spiritual death which yields despair. Not to say that one should pay no attention to the body, not to say that one should pay no attention to the world as it is. This story of Jesus in John's Gospel is very interesting. John really presents Jesus in a very different light from the other Gospels. In the other Gospels, Jesus is a little more down to earth. In John's Gospel, he always seems to be walking about a foot above ground. And he tends to talk in this very metaphorical and lofty way, and he always seems to know what's going to happen next and predict it and read people's minds. I mean, he's a lot more... He's more the resurrected Christ than the historical Jesus in John's telling. He's always saying things like, I am the resurrection. And yet, in this long passage, eventually, he seems to really get it. But what is going on is very sad. In his first encounter with the sisters, he meets Martha on the road and gets very theological and philosophical with her about resurrection. But by the time Mary gets to him and says, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. He's touched. He's deeply moved. He weeps. He enters into a complete awareness, a complete compassion, and a sense of loss. To see what is happening, to acknowledge that death is real and that sorrow is true, is completely appropriate for people of faith. And at the same time, there is a larger vision. There is reason to hope. Mary and Martha say to Jesus, if you'd been here, our brother would not have died. And that sounds a lot like what any of us might say in the 20th or 21st century about any number of incredible tragedies. Think about Elie Wiesel's book Night and his treatment of the experience of the Holocaust. It seems very reasonable for a Jewish person of this century to say, there is no God. It seems very reasonable to give up hope in the face of a tragedy like the tsunami in Japan. To say, if God were real, these things would not happen, is something that is human to say. But I think that Mary and Martha, though they say those words, say something else as well. Martha says, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. And yet, I know that you are still you. You are still the one who brings hope and life to us.